I get the sense that the winds of political change are actually starting to blow, and not just here in Australia, but right around the world. In the Netherlands, the Party for Freedom leader Geert Wilders won a stunning victory over the establishment. And his enduring appeal has been about the importance of culture and how immigration policies are actually causing a lot of the problems there, including crime and unrest. In Argentina, as we've just discussed, radical libertarian Xavier Milei became the president on a platform of cutting government, abolishing the central bank, adopting the US dollar as the central currency to help Argentina reach its economic potential. And his aggressive approach is reflected in interviews like this.
Entonces, como no pueden pelear con las herramientas legítimas, se apalancan en el aparato represivo del Estado, poniendo torres de guita para hacernos mierda. Y aún así no pueden, tuvieron que bajar la nota, ¿Me entendés? Que están perdiendo. Están desesperados, están perdiendo la batalla cultural, los zurdos de mierda. Por primera vez se ven acorralados los zurdos de mierda.
If you can believe it, that was one of the tamest interviews he gave. And at home, well, the latest polls have the Albanese government under the pump, and his government is actually resorting to very desperate measures to make reckless and outrageous accusations of Peter Dutton. Have a look at this.
On Monday, Speaker, we saw the opposition, led by the Leader of the Opposition, come into the chamber and vote to protect pedophiles over children. That's what they did.
That is really grubby stuff that will only work in Dutton's favour, in my view, because it actually highlights how little the government has to offer. They're all spin, all abuse, and no substance. Joining me now to discuss what's driving this change is legal academic and Sky News contributor Rocco Loiacono. Rocco, great to have you on the show. 3 examples of change, one driven by culture, one by economics, and one by general uselessness. What's the overall message of the current state of political change around the world, do you think?
Well, good evening, Corey. Look, the overall message is that people have had enough of their political overlords treating them like mugs. I was in London recently talking to Robert Roos, the Dutch EU parliamentarian who exposed the insidious lie that the COVID vaccine is supposed to prevent transmission, and he held the Pfizer executives to account, saying that they hadn't actually tested for that. And we were talking, and he said, look, I've been elected by the people and therefore I'm accountable to them and therefore I will represent their best interests. Oh, what a novel idea. Look at what's happening in Ireland at the moment. We talk about discontent. Their people are demonstrating day after day because an illegal immigrant who should have been deported stabbed to death an innocent 4-year-old girl. Yet the super conceited Prime Minister there has made it his priority to clamp down on hate speech. Talk about victim blaming. Look, what is driving this, Corey, is, look, we've probably got at the moment the most corrupt and incompetent ruling class since at least pre-industrial revolution days. People have had enough and they're saying so. And I hope they start saying so not only just around the world, but here in Australia too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I do think we've got a corrupted political system in the general sense. And someone like Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, for example, I've met with him. I like him. He's been widely maligned by the political establishment. He's been blackballed. He's been virtually banned from even coming to Australia. They wanted to do that for the decades or more that he's been there. But his victory suggests that he's actually just been prescient in identifying problems before they occur, or he can identify the ones that are occurring and the establishment wants the people to remain silent about. What does it say about the establishment critics of people like Wilders, the Prime Minister in Ireland, as you say, and the rejection of the establishment in, say, Argentina?
Well, it should come as no surprise, Corey, that when everyday people use democracy to reject the elitist agenda of the ruling class, the elites decry populism. Oh, look, populism is simply the pejorative term that they use to describe democracy when they don't like being told that, hey, look, what you're putting on us, we're not in favour of. You're actually accountable to us and we don't like what you're doing. Geert Wilders and his victory might also be prescient in another sense. I mean, all eyes next year will be on America and its elections, but there are some very important elections coming up in Europe too, and we should have our eyes on the continent. In Austria, the Freedom Party there, which is like the Dutch party led by Wilders, is leading in the polls, and elections will be held there in October of 2024. The Alternative for Germany is polling around 20% at the moment, and the German politicians will face the voters early in 2025. And then in May next year, the EU Parliament will have elections, and Wilders is part of a coalition of freedom parties. And look, if they get a substantial number of people elected there, that will be the ultimate rejection of the elitist agenda.
Yeah, and let's not forget the UK. I mean, the government there is on the ropes. And what you've mentioned in Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, the European Parliament, and I've mentioned the UK, it's cultural issues. Immigration is the central thing that's revolving. People feel alienated in their own countries in these places. Do you think that, sorry, I should contrast that, because in the case of Argentina, it was all economics, wasn't it? It was a basket case. So we've got, on one hand, we know what's motivating Europe. What was the final straw for the Argentinian people to reject the status quo after 80 years of pain?
Look, maybe 143% inflation was enough to focus their minds, as one of my cousins in Argentina said, to actually make them think like adults for a change and vote accordingly. Purely economic, as you say. But the other thing that hasn't received much attention about Argentina is that the Peronist socialist government earlier this year signed the biggest Belt and Road agreement that China has with any country in the whole of the American continent. So I think people obviously were very, very concerned about that. Argentina is going to be interesting. Look, they've rejected Peronism/Marxism before, only then to go back to it. But look, let's hope for the sake of Argentina and its people that Milei can come through for them this time.
Yeah, the pain of transition often outweighs the desire for a longer-term outcome. But in Australia, we're told there's this truism in politics. Governments lose election rather than oppositions winning them. Why do you reckon the political tables have turned so quickly on the beta man Albanese government? And what do you reckon the opposition needs to do to take maximum advantage of these failings right now?
Oh, look, I think the first part of your question can be summed up in the Spectator Australia lead article this week, when the Albanese government's policy can be summed up with three I's: ideology, idiocy and incompetence. And we see that in numerous areas. Look at energy. Chris Bowen is rushing like a lemming into this renewable net zero pipe dream when the rest of the world is running away from it and fast. We've seen what's happened in immigration, and in particular with the complete farce that was the release of the long-term detainees, now with another boat arriving. And then in terms of economics, I mean, look, we've got this vandalism going on with these, for example, industrial relations laws, which are killing productivity. And that's not just me saying that, that's the Productivity Commission saying that. In terms of the second part of your question, look, the opposition needs to remember why the Liberal Party was founded. The Liberal Party is the party of the forgotten people. It's not the party of big business or the elites. It's the party of the artisans, the salary earners, the shopkeepers, the small business people. And when the Liberal Party has remembered that and geared its policies towards that, those people have done well because, as Menzies said, they are the backbone of the nation. And the other thing I think we can draw a lesson from this year in terms of the opposition is on culture. The opposition in Peter Dutton, no doubt supported brilliantly by Jacinta Price, in the face of the bedwetters, the focus groups and the polling that said that the Voice was going to win in a canter, they stood up against it, against identity politics and against all that narrative. And guess what? The no won in a canter. And this is a message to the opposition that, look, when you stand for a principle and for conservative principles at that, instead of trying to be Labor light, you will take the people with you and you will taste electoral success.
Yeah, you're quite right. I think the two things that the coalition needs to focus on is culture and economics. And if they get those right, the people will give them confidence and the people's lives will be better off. That's the bottom line of what they should be doing in this country. Hey, thanks very much for joining me again, Rocco Loikono. It was always a pleasure to have you on, Bernardi. Really appreciate it.